Welcome back to Chase Circle, where every story takes you a little adventure. Today, I'm going to share with you a story that's full of surprise and maybe even a lesson or two. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this journey together.
Mom, please. Ava can't stay with Mrs. Donnelly all week. My mother didn't even lower her voice. She's too much, Emily. We have plans. A nurse stood at the foot of my bed with a clipboard. She was waiting for a name. My stitches pulled every time I tried to inhale. Patricia, I said, because I couldn't call her mom anymore. You're being dramatic, she replied. It's just a hospital stay. It's 5 days, maybe more. My appendix ruptured. A pause. Then she said it like she was closing a tab. We already raised our kid. We're done. I pictured Ava's backpack by the neighbor's door. I pictured her trying to be quiet so she wouldn't be too much. And I realized my family was willing to let my daughter slip through the cracks if it protected their comfort. If you've ever been told to endure because you're strong, you'll understand this hit like so this reaches the right people. I'm Emily Carter. I'm an office admin outside Cleveland. I'm not dramatic. I like schedules and backup plans. I like knowing my daughter is covered. Ava is 9 now. A year ago, when this happened, she was 8, old enough to remember, young enough to blame herself. I woke up in recovery with a plastic taste in my mouth and a deep ache under my ribs. The doctor told me my appendix had burst. Infection was the risk. Minimum 5 days, he said, and we'll watch for complications. My first question wasn't about my body. Where's Ava? Safe with your neighbor, the nurse said. But we need a plan for her. I scrolled to Patricia in my contacts. My mother loved saying, family is everything. Online, she looked devoted. In real life, she could be selective. She answered on the 3rd ring. Mom, I said, I'm in the hospital. I need you to take Ava for a few days. There was no, are you okay? Just silence that felt like math. We can't, she said. We? I repeated. We have plans, she said, like repeating it made it reasonable. This is an emergency, I said. I can't even stand. Her voice tightened. Emily, you always make things into a crisis. My appendix ruptured. And you're in the best place for that, she said, as if that solved everything else. Ava will be fine. She needs someone, I said. Not fine. She needs stability. Patricia exhaled. Honey, you know we love her, but she's a lot. Too much energy. It's exhausting. She's a child, I said. You chose to be a single mother, Patricia replied, softer now. You chose this life. That line was her way of making my needs sound like consequences. I'm not asking you to raise her, I said. Just help me for 5 days. Then came the sentence that made the room feel colder. We already raised our kid. We're done. I called my father, Richard, straight to voicemail. Twice. I called my sister, Lauren. She picked up with loud music behind her. Can I call you back? She said. I'm in the hospital, I told her. I need you to take Ava. The music dipped. What happened? My appendix burst. Mom won't help. Lauren's concern flickered and then vanished. Emily, we're leaving tomorrow. For what? A cruise, she said. 10 days. Booked for months. My chest tightened. So you're all going? It's for the family, she said in that calm, reasonable tone. Mom needs this. Dad needs this. We all need time together. I'm family, I said. You're strong, Lauren replied. You always handle things. Ava can stay with the neighbor. It's just a few days. It's at least 5, I said. And what if I get worse? You won't, she said. And then, quieter, don't make this hard. The nurse took my phone and said, Ma'am, we need to confirm a guardian for the child tonight. Lauren's voice went flat. We're in the middle of family stuff. Put Emily back on. Family stuff. Not me, not Ava. Their plans. When the call ended, my hands shook so badly I couldn't hold the phone. It felt rehearsed, like they'd already agreed how to say no. So I called the one person my mother never liked me being close to, her sister, Susan. Susan answered on the first ring. Emily? I'm in the hospital, I said. Ava needs somewhere safe. Mom won't take her. Lauren's leaving on a cruise. Susan asked one question. Where is Ava right now? With Mrs. Donnelly. Text me the address, she said. I'm coming. Susan walked into my room with no flowers, no small talk. She squeezed my hand once. I picked Ava up, she said. She asked if you were mad at her. My eyes burned. No, never. Susan's jaw tightened. Good, because someone needs to be mad, and it's not going to be you. One detail kept nagging at me. On the whiteboard in my room, under emergency contact, the nurse had written my mother's number first, then crossed it out after the call. The ink line looked like a little wound. She asked, gently. Is there anyone else? Anyone local? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to give her 3 names and a spare key. Instead, I watched her write Susan's name with careful, professional neatness, like she was trying not to judge me. And the strangest part? Patricia never called back. Not once. No text. No, how's Ava? Nothing. It was like my daughter's existence was inconvenient the second she required effort. That night my fever climbed, and a social worker came in with paperwork just in case. I signed with a shaky hand, and I kept thinking the same thing. If they can abandon us this easily, what else have they been hiding? At sunrise, Susan came back with a thick folder under her arm and a look I didn't recognize. She sat down and said, Emily, I need you to tell me every dollar you've ever sent them. If you've ever been pressured to stay quiet, to keep peace, drop a comment, did your family ever call it love, while it cost you everything? Susan set the folder on my tray table like it weighed 100 pounds. Bank statements, printouts, highlighted lines. My name circled in ink. I didn't come to scare you, she said. I came because something doesn't add up. You've been sending them money, she continued. A lot of it. My mouth went dry. For Dad's heart. For Mom's cancer treatments. That's what they told me. Susan's eyes didn't move. Emily, I called clinics and hospitals. There's no record of either of them being treated for what they claimed. I felt a cold wave move through my chest. That can't be right. It can, she said, and opened the folder, page after page. Transfers to my parents, sometimes weekly, sometimes in bursts, that matched the emergencies they invented. New medication. Unexpected scan. The specialist won't schedule without a deposit. I recognized the script. We hate to ask. It's embarrassing. But it's for the family. Susan ran her finger down a highlighted column. 3 years. Total $172,000. $172,000. I tried to laugh, because my brain couldn't accept it, but it came out like a cough. No, I don't even make... I know, Susan said. That's why I'm here. Then she pulled out the bills your mother had emailed me. Every PDF had the same layout, the same little logo, the same clean font. Susan tapped the bottom line. Same invoice number repeats. That doesn't happen. They said the hospital changed systems, I whispered. Susan didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That night, after Ava fell asleep at Susan's place, Susan sat at her kitchen table and did what my mother never expected anyone to do. She verified. She called my parents' health insurer and asked, in careful, legal language, what could be confirmed. She called the cardiology office my father had seen. She called the oncology center my mother claimed was overbooked. Every receptionist said the same thing. No patient by those names. No appointments. No records. Susan also compared the bills to real hospital invoices she'd kept from her own surgery years ago. Real invoices were messy. Different codes. Different dates. My mother's were too clean. Too perfect. Like they were designed to be understood by someone who didn't know what to look for. And then there was Ava. Susan told me Ava had asked, softly, "Is Grandma mad at Mommy?" Like a child assumes adults can't just be selfish. Susan said she told Ava, "Your mom is sick right now and I'm here. Ava nodded and went back to her book, pretending she didn't care, but she kept checking the front window anyway. "Do you remember last spring?" Susan asked, "when your mom said her cancer came back and she needed a new plan?" I nodded. I remembered wiring money from my car outside Ava's dance practice. Susan slid a receipt toward me. "Same week, your parents put down a deposit at a travel agency. Same amount. Same day." My throat tightened. "A travel agency?" "Luxury cruise," Susan said. 10 days. Booked months ago. Like Lauren told you. They weren't scraping by. They were planning. I searched for any explanation that didn't end with my parents being thieves. Maybe they borrowed it? Susan shook her head. I drove past their house. Suitcases lined up by the garage. New luggage. Not a couple fighting illness. A nurse came in to check my vitals and paused when she saw my face. "Do you need a minute?" she asked softly. I nodded. The nurse left. The door clicked shut. Susan waited until it was quiet. "Did they ever show you real medical paperwork in person? Not a screenshot, not an email, real documents?" I thought about it. The answer formed slowly. "No, they always said it was private," I muttered. "They said I shouldn't embarrass them by asking." Susan's mouth tightened. "That's how they kept you obedient. Shame, duty. Because we're family." Halfway through the folder was something else. A screenshot of a group message. Susan's voice lowered. "You need to see what they think of you, my mother. Emily will pay. She always does. Lauren. Tell her it's for Dad's heart. She can't say no. My father. Keep it for the family. Works every time." My ears rang. It felt like the bed was too small for my body. Before I tell you what I did next, tell me in the comments if you saw your own family writing about you like this. Would you confront them or go straight to a lawyer? Susan watched my face carefully. "You're going to want to swallow this and move on. That's what you've been trained to do." "I can't even stand up," I whispered. "How am I supposed to fight them?" "You don't need to stand to draw a line," she said. "You just need to decide where it is." She flipped to the last page. "Cruise final payment." Stamped in neat bank lettering. Same week my mother had called crying about another scan. "They were never sick," I said. "No," Susan replied. "They were just expensive." I stared at Patricia's contact photo on my phone. Christmas. Ava on her lap. My daughter, who they'd called too much, used as the soft excuse to keep me paying. Susan reached into her bag and handed me a business card. A local attorney. Fraud and civil recovery. "I already checked him," Susan said. "Tough. Discreet. But if you do this, your mother will call you cruel." My incision burned as I breathed. What do I do? Susan's answer was simple. Protect Ava. Protect yourself. The rest is noise. At the end of that day, I sent one text to Lauren. "Don't leave town yet. We need to talk." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, and my phone stayed silent. If you want to hear what happened when I finally stopped being the strong one, subscribe so you don't miss the rest, because the next part is where they tried to make me feel guilty for not letting them steal from my daughter. I didn't sleep. Every time the pain meds wore off, my mind replayed those messages. Emily will pay. Works every time. On day 3, Susan wheeled a small laptop onto my tray and said, "If you're doing this, we start while the paper trail is fresh." The attorney's name was Mark Feldman. He met me at the hospital. No flashy suit, just a worn briefcase and a steady voice. He listened while I explained what my parents claimed and what Susan found. He asked for dates, amounts, wire, Zelle, checks. He didn't flinch at $172,000. He just wrote it down. Then he asked, "Why did you send it?" "They made me feel like if I didn't, I was a bad daughter," I said. "And they always tied it back to Ava." Mark nodded once. "Family fraud runs on guilt," he said. "Money is the fuel." He laid out options. A demand letter. A civil claim for fraud and recovery. "Your goal," he said, is protection and repayment. Protection hit me harder than repayment, because this wasn't just my savings. It was whether Ava grew up watching her mother get drained and told to smile through it. Mark asked if I still had the medical bills. I did. A whole email folder labeled Mom, Dad, Health, like a dutiful accountant. Susan forwarded everything to Mark, and he checked the file metadata. These PDFs were created on a home computer, he said, not hospital software. The author name is Patricia C. My stomach dropped. Mark looked at me. I'm sorry, but this is strong evidence. That was the moment the numbness cracked into something steady. Not rage. Clarity. Susan leaned in. That's the sci-fi detail, she whispered. Too clean, too controlled. Mark drafted the demand letter that afternoon. It listed the false statements, the dates, and the request. Repay in full or face litigation. Before he left, he asked, "Was your sister involved?" I wanted to say no on reflex. Then Susan slid a new printout onto the bed. A payment receipt from my parents' account. Lauren Kitchen Remodel. Deposit. The date was 2 days after I'd sent Dad's heart medication money. My pulse thudded. They paid for her remodel. Susan nodded. Lauren wasn't just watching. She was benefiting. Mark's voice stayed calm. We'll include her in discovery, he said. If she participated, it will show. After Mark left, my phone lit up. A text from Patricia. Heard you're making a scene. Don't embarrass the family. We'll talk when we get back. When we get back. Like I was a problem they could schedule. Then my father. Stop this nonsense. We did everything for you. Remember who took care of you. There it was. The old script. Debt. Obligation. You owe us. And then Lauren called. I stared at her name until it stopped ringing. She called again. I picked up on the third try because I wanted to hear her say it. Emily, she started. Fake gentle. What is Susan doing? Mom says she's filling your head with lies. My appendix burst, I said. You still chose a cruise. We haven't left yet, she snapped, then softened fast. This trip is for the family. Mom and Dad have been through a lot. They lied about being sick, I said. Silence. Then too quick. No, they didn't. You're saying that without even asking for proof, I said. Lauren's voice turned sharp. Why are you doing this? You're going to ruin them. They ruined themselves, I said, and my voice finally didn't shake. She switched tactics. Think about Ava. She needs grandparents. She needs family. There it was again, using my child as leverage to keep me quiet. My daughter needed you last week, I said. You said she was too much. I never said that, she protested. You didn't have to, I replied. Lauren started crying. I would have felt bad once. Now I noticed the timing right when I wouldn't budge. She whispered, please, just wait until after the cruise. Don't do this right now. So it was real. The trip mattered more than the truth. I hung up. While I was still in the hospital, Ava video called me from Susan's kitchen table. She kept her voice bright, like she was performing fine. Behind her, I saw Susan's hand resting on Ava's shoulder, steadying her without squeezing. Grandma hasn't called, Ava said, like she was reporting the weather. Did I do something? I swallowed hard. No, baby, you didn't. Ava nodded, but her eyes dropped. Okay, she said, and then she changed the subject fast, telling me about a spelling test, because that was safer than asking why adults disappear. After we hung up, my phone pinged again. Patricia had posted a photo online. 3 matching suitcases lined up by her front door, captioned, Family Time. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. She could perform devotion for strangers, but not show up for her granddaughter. That night, Susan asked, Are you willing to make this public if they refuse? I hated the idea. I'm private, but I also knew my parents counted on silence and reputation. So when Mark sent the demand letter by certified mail, I posted a short statement online. No insults. Just facts. I'd been hospitalized. They refused to take Ava because they had plans. And I'd discovered the money I sent for illness had no medical records. I asked anyone else who'd been asked for medical help to contact me. Messages came in within an hour. A cousin. They asked me too. A former neighbor. Your mom cried to me about treatments. A church friend. Your dad said he needed surgery. My hands shook as I read it. This wasn't just about me. If that made your stomach drop too, tap like because people like this survive on secrecy, and secrecy only works when no one talks. When I was discharged, weak and sore, I didn't go home first. I went straight to Mark's office, signed the complaint, and watched my own name become the plaintiff against the people who raised me. The paper felt heavy, but the heaviest part was knowing this. The moment they were served, my mother would say I did this to the family. And she would expect my daughter to carry that guilt too. Being served didn't make them apologize. It made them organize. 3 days after Mark filed, Patricia finally called. Not to ask how I was healing. Not to ask about Ava. Her first words were, "How could you do this to us?" "I didn't do anything to you," I said. "You lied to me." Patricia gasped, offended on purpose. "We did what we had to do for the family." "For the family," I repeated. Then Richard took the phone, calm as ever. "Emily, this is going to hurt Ava," he said. "Do you want her growing up with a broken family name?" There it was. Reputation. Fear. "Ava's future was hurt," I said, "when you refused to take her while I was in surgery." "We had plans," he replied. "You mean the cruise I paid for?" I said. Patricia started crying loud enough to be heard, controlled enough to be useful. "We were going to tell you," she sobbed. "We were going to pay you back." "When?" I asked. Silence. After that call, their tactics got legal. Their attorney offered a private resolution, less than half the money, a confidentiality agreement, and a line that made Mark's face go still. To protect the family, especially the minor child. They were trying to make my silence sound like good parenting. Mark asked, "Do you want to settle?" My first instinct was yes. I wanted this to stop. Then I remembered Patricia calling Ava too much, and Lauren saying, "Don't make this hard." "No," I said. "Not like that." Discovery began. Mark requested financial records, messages, and proof of the alleged illnesses. My parents delayed. Claimed paperwork was lost. Every delay was a bet that I'd get tired and fold. Then an envelope arrived in my mother's handwriting. Not an apology, an instruction. "Emily," it read, "we do not air private matters." Then, "If you stop this, we will take Ava to Disney this summer. She deserves a happy childhood." My hands went cold. They were offering my child as a reward for my silence. Susan read it and tore it in half. "That's not love," she said. "That's a leash." Depositions were worse than I expected. Sitting across from Patricia while she spoke softly and said, "Emily has always been emotional. She exaggerates. Felt like being erased on purpose." Mark didn't argue with her tone. He used facts, metadata showing Patricia C., repeated invoice numbers. The travel agency receipt dated the same day as my transfer. Patricia blinked fast. "I don't understand computers," she said. Mark asked, "Then how did the file author become your name?" She looked at her lawyer for a split second. Richard tried a different angle. "We were saving it for Ava," he claimed. "We didn't want Emily to waste money. They were saying they stole from me to protect my child from me." The new secret that surfaced in Discovery made my stomach drop again. My parents had opened a second bank account. My transfers went in, then got moved out within hours, as if they were laundering their own story. And then Lauren got subpoenaed. When Mark asked about the kitchen remodel deposit, she said, "My parents help me sometimes. That's normal." Mark slid across a timeline. My transfer, then their payment to her contractor 2 days later. Lauren's smile tightened. Coincidence. But her call logs didn't match her answer. There were calls between Lauren and Patricia right before almost every medical emergency text I received. Patterns. Planning. That was the sigh detail that hit me hardest. The timing was too clean, too coordinated, like my life had been scheduled for extraction. After deposition day, my phone filled with guilt from relatives. "Don't do this," And family is forever. Nobody asked, "How is Ava?" Not one. A week before trial, they tried something that wasn't legal strategy. It was pure control. Susan called me at noon. "Patricia is at my front door," she said quietly. With Richard. My incisions still ached when I moved, but my whole body went alert. Why? "She says she's here to see Ava and smooth things over," Susan said. "But she brought Lauren, and they're not asking. They're telling." In the background, I heard my mother's voice, sugary and loud enough for Ava to hear. "Sweetheart, come pack a little bag," Patricia sang. "We're taking you out. You deserve time with real family." Real family. Like Susan was a babysitter and I was an inconvenience. I heard Ava's small voice. "I don't want to go." Then Patricia, sharper. "Don't be rude. Your mom is confused right now." Confused. That word made my hands shake. Susan stepped between them. "Ava said no," she said. "And Emily has asked for no contact while this is in court." Richard's voice came through, calm and threatening at the same time. "You don't get to keep our granddaughter from us. We're family." Susan didn't yell. She said, "Leave my property." Patricia started crying again, big sobs, performance ready. "We just want what's best for her," she wailed. "Emily is unstable. She's being influenced." I could picture Ava standing there, frozen, trying to read adult faces like it was a test. Susan said, "If you don't leave, I'm calling the police." There was a pause. Then Lauren's voice, cold. "Wow, so you're really doing this. You're really choosing money over Ava's grandparents." Susan replied, "Emily is choosing Ava over your lies." They left when Susan pulled out her phone. Not because they respected Ava's no, because they didn't want a report. Afterward, Ava asked Susan, "Am I in trouble?" When Susan told me that, I had to press my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. Ava thought she was the problem. That was the damage. That was what they were willing to hand her, as long as their cruise photos stayed pretty. As trial got closer, Patricia offered a new deal. Full repayment, but only if I publicly posted that I'd misunderstood and that Susan had manipulated me. They wanted me to lie so they could keep their image. I said no. Because if I taught Ava anything, it couldn't be that truth is optional when powerful people demand comfort. The trial date arrived like a storm you can't outrun, and I knew my mother would stand up in court, look innocent, and say the same thing again. For the family. If you had to guess right now, would they finally tell the truth in court, or would they double down and risk losing everything? Tell me your prediction in the comments before the verdict. Court doesn't feel like TV. It feels like cold air and bad coffee and people pretending their hands aren't shaking. Mark walked me through what would happen. I wore a plain navy dress. Susan sat behind me with Ava's emergency contact papers in her bag like armor. My parents arrived together. Patricia wore pearls. Richard wore his respectable face. Lauren came in last, looking irritated, like she'd been dragged into a meeting she thought she was above. When Patricia saw me, she didn't look scared. She looked offended, like I'd broken a rule of nature by not absorbing the pain quietly. The judge was older, tired-eyed, the kind of person who has heard every version of, "I'm the victim." He listened. He didn't rush. Patricia's lawyer opened with a story, not facts. "This is a family misunderstanding," he said. "A daughter with resentment, an aunt meddling, parents who only wanted what was best for their granddaughter." There it was again, Ava as a shield. Mark stood and spoke plainly. Dates, transfers, the total, $172,000, the lack of medical records, the fabricated invoices. He didn't insult them. He didn't need to. Then came the moment Patricia thought would save her tears. She took the stand and cried about how hard illness was. She said she didn't want to burden me. She said she did it for the family. Mark waited until the room was quiet and handed her the metadata printout. "Ma'am," he asked, "if this came from a hospital, why does the file author show your name?" Patricia blinked fast. "I don't know," she whispered. Mark asked, "Did you create these documents?" She shook her head, too quick. Mark asked again, slower. Did you create these documents? Her lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Patricia's eyes slid to Richard. Just a flicker. A tell. That sigh detail was what broke the spell for me. Even in court, she couldn't look at me. She looked at the person who coached her. Richard testified next. He stayed calm and said, "We meant to repay her. We were just trying to keep things together." Mark asked, "Together for whom?" "For the family," Richard answered automatically, like it was programmed. Mark turned to the judge. "Your Honor, they used that phrase to override consent and extract money through deception. And when the plaintiff was hospitalized, they refused care for the child because they had vacation plans." The judge's pen paused. He looked up. "You refused to care for your granddaughter?" he asked. Patricia sat straighter. "We had this trip planned for months," she said, like that made it acceptable. "Emily is strong. Ava was safe." The judge's voice stayed even but colder. "Safe is not the same as supported. Before I tell you the verdict, I need to ask you something because this is where people split. If someone lies and steals, but they're your parents, do you still draw the line? Or do you forgive because family? Tell me in the comments. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking where you think the boundary should be." Lauren's testimony was the ugliest because it was polished. She said she didn't know. She said I was overreacting. She said Susan hates our mother. Mark didn't argue feelings. He showed the timeline again. My transfer, the kitchen deposit, the calls right before my mother's emergency texts. Lauren's face tightened. "I can't control what my parents do," she said. Mark asked. "But you can benefit from it." She didn't answer. Closing arguments were short. Mark asked for repayment, legal fees, and a formal finding of fraud. Patricia's lawyer asked for grace. Like grace was something you hand out after you get caught. The judge left for less than an hour. When he came back, the courtroom stood. He ruled in my favor. He said the words that made my lungs finally fill. Fraud by misrepresentation. He ordered my parents to repay the full amount and cover my legal costs. Patricia made a small sound, like surprise. Richard's jaw clenched. Lauren stared at her nails. Outside the courthouse, Patricia tried one last time. She stepped toward me and said, "Emily, you didn't have to humiliate us." I looked at her and felt nothing but clarity. "You humiliated yourselves," I said. "And you almost taught Ava that love means taking." Richard hissed, "This will destroy us." "You booked a cruise while I was in surgery," I replied. "You did that yourself." They appealed, threatened to appeal, talked loudly about how unfair it was. Mark wasn't impressed. The judgment stood. Within 2 months, they couldn't keep up. To pay what they owed, they sold the house I grew up in. Patricia posted vague quotes online about betrayal and ungrateful children. People commented hearts. Nobody knew what those hearts were supporting. I didn't respond. I blocked numbers. I changed my email. I set boundaries that felt brutal at first, then felt like breathing. Ava is 9 now. She doesn't know Patricia called her too much. Susan and I decided she didn't need that poison in her childhood. Ava only knows that when Mommy was in the hospital, Aunt Susan showed up. She knows Susan keeps extra pajamas at her house and makes grilled cheese the way Ava likes. One night, months after court, Ava asked me, "Are Grandma and Grandpa mad?" I kept my voice steady. "They made choices that weren't safe for us," I said. "And my job is to keep you safe." Ava thought about it. Then she nodded once, like she was filing it away. "Okay," she said. "Can we call Aunt Susan?" That's what justice looked like in my living room. Not revenge, not yelling, just a little girl choosing the person who showed up. I'm not proud that I sued my parents. I'm proud I stopped teaching my daughter that her needs are too much, and her mom's pain is something to ignore. So here's the question I still sit with. Was I cruel for taking them to court? Or was that the only way to prove to my daughter that family doesn't get to harm you and call it love?